Hello everyone, thank you for choosing this video. I am Dayoung Kim, a PhD candidate in School of Engineering Education at Purdue University. In this video, I present a preliminary work of our paper titled A Qualitative Synthesis of Ethical Values, Organizational Culture, and Industry Environment in the Health Products Industry, focusing on the subculture of engineering. This work was done with Dr. Justin Hess, who is an assistant professor in engineering education at Purdue University, and this work is a part of a larger NSF-funded research project titled Understanding and Evaluating Ethical Engineering Practice. Engineering ethics is an essential component of an engineering curriculum, but it has been often pointed out that current practices in engineering ethics education might not meet the needs of engineering practice. As part of the larger NSF research project, in our previous research, we conducted a phenomenography study followed by critical incident analysis with engineers in the health product industry, specifically orthopedics, pharmaceuticals, and medical devices. Consistent with other research, our research shows that immersion in an organizational culture which emphasizes ethics significantly influences and broadens individual engineers' understanding of ethical practice. And then we became curious what the organizational culture is, which is such heavily influences engineers' understanding of ethical engineering practice. Therefore, we designed a separate study which answers the following three research questions. Research question 1. What are common ethical values that appear across engineers and organizations in health products industry? We first focused on ethical values because values are often described as core elements of culture. Research question 2. What elements of the organizational culture reflect and sustain organizational ethical values? Here we investigated what the other elements of organizational culture are besides the ethical values. Research question 3. What characteristics of the health products industry inform the organizational ethical culture? Here we zoomed out and looked at what the industry environment that impacts the organizational culture. To answer these research questions, we conducted an inductive thematic analysis of the interview transcripts of 21 engineers working in the health products industry, which were carefully selected to properly represent the overall data that we had collected for the previous studies. Based on the analysis, we found various themes, each of which were associated with each of the three levels depicted in this graphic. As this graphic shows, we conceptualized organizational ethical culture as what's embedded in and interacts with the industry environment, as well as individuals who belong to the organization. In research question 1, we identified 12 different ethical values that commonly appeared across individuals who we interviewed. While these came out of individuals' report, we considered them as organizational ethical values because they appeared across various individuals and guided their decisions and behaviors when they were working in the organization. We did not consider the values that were obviously personal to the individual, such as religious beliefs. The 12 ethical values could be grouped into 4 value categories: fiduciary values, economic values, engineering values, and process values. The first category of values, which is fiduciary values, was often described by participants as non-negotiable values and include customer focus, product quality, and safety. Economic values were also salient and counted as important criteria in decision-making. Three primary categories of economic ethical values emerged from the analysis: profitability, resource allocation, and time and cost management. A third category of engineering values also emerged as an important set of ethical values. This category encapsulated a subset of values primarily relating to scientific and engineering methods and included scientific rigor, data integrity, and technical competence. The process values define the approved behaviors of individuals in performing tasks in the workplace. The process values category included compliance, trustworthiness, and collective communication. In research question 2, we identified 11 different elements which could be classified into 4 types: symbols, membership, practices, and systems. Some organizational values were explicitly communicated via symbols, such as official statements like Code of Ethics and Company Credo, and visible artifacts. The organizational membership, which is determined by the recruitment, persistence, and termination, also reflected and sustained ethical values in the organization. Organizational practices that exemplify the ethical values emerged as an important element of the organizational culture and included the sub-themes of discourse and observable behaviors. Organizational systems, including training, mentorship, and resources, also reflected and supported ethical values of the organizations. In research question 3, we identified 3 specific characteristics of the industry that influences organizational ethical culture: customer focus, economic norms, and highly regulated industry. The customer impact theme was dominant. Many interviewees discussed the nature of business by highlighting how their products affect people's lives directly. The second theme, economic norms, was made based on interviewees who mentioned the for-profit nature of the health products industry, especially in the US. Interviewees who had prior experience in other industries like automotive, construction, and aerospace compared the health product industry with these industries during the interview, and that often highlighted how economic factors could potentially affect organizational ethical value. Interviewees often discussed the highly regulated nature of the industry and how this informs the culture and values of the organization, particularly around the ultimate motivation of safety. We expect the findings from this study can help companies cultivate an ethical organizational culture by identifying values that they can emphasize explicitly. For example, companies can compare the values they currently emphasize and values and value categories we introduced in the presentation. Companies can also develop policies, procedures, and organizational structures that promote ethical practices, referring to our findings from the research question 2. Moreover, findings from this study suggest the importance of reflecting on the social context and regulatory environment to cultivate organizational ethical culture in a company. Based on the study results, we brought some points that we want to discuss with participants of the APPE this year. First, how might the ethical values we identified relate and differ from the values that are often explicitly stated in organizational value statements? While doing this study, we found an article by Bourne, Jenkins, and Perry where the authors created an inventory of organizational values based on the value statements of Fortune 500 companies and 200 for-profit and non-for-profit organizations in the United Kingdom. While many values we identified overlapped with the values in the Bourne and his colleagues' inventory, some values we identified were not explicitly captured in their inventory. Specifically, while the inventory explicitly captures the fiduciary and process value categories, it did not explicitly include engineering values and economic values. While some of these misalignment might be due to semantics, we think such findings resonate with Bourne and his colleagues' hypothesis regarding the existence of hidden values within organizations. Another question we have is, what tensions might manifest due to professional values of engineers versus those of larger organizations? And in turn, What can organizations do to reduce these tensions? We specifically focused on engineering subculture in this study, and our interviewees' personal and professional values and their organization's values were generally well aligned, considering that our interviewees rarely spoke of value conflicts. However, the conflicts between managers and professional subgroups is a common topic of much research in engineering and business ethics, so we think it would be helpful to discuss what strategies can be used to reduce such potential tensions. And our research question 2 results may partially contribute to such discussion. The last one is how could organizations engage their symbols, membership, and practices and systems with the industrial characteristics to help foster members' ethical values. Industry environment does impact types of ethical issues that are commonly arise, so to better foster members' ethical values, context-relevant design of organizational elements would be necessary. We could think of designing a context-relevant training which highlights the characteristics of their industry and how it guides the ethical values they prioritize, but we are also curious about others' opinion on potential strategies. If you have any questions about this study or want to schedule a time for further discussion, please let us know. Thank you very much for listening.